Story 1. In the United States, the idea that it is endearing when a 7-year-old assists in funding his best friend's cancer treatment by operating a lemonade stand. Story 2. Corrupt governments that trample on people's rights and take from the poor to make the already rich richer. Story 3. People use their phones to order food from a local restaurant and have it delivered straight to their front door, paying via financing in 3 monthly installments of $7.61. Story 4. Everyone has a device in their pocket that tracks their every movement and conversation, then relays that information to large corporations who use it to sell products you do not need. Story 5. Having to beg just to get a minimum wage job. I do not know what you have to do to get something entry-level anymore. Small sacrifice? Story 6. People post everything they do on Facebook or Instagram. It seems they are not aware of the security implications of sharing their location and daily schedule. Story 7. The torment nexus that is modern social media. Causing rage and hate generates more engagement, so everything is designed to do that. Puppies and cats cannot compete. Story 8. Constant surveillance occurs as everything you look at, buy, and see on the internet is recorded and sold to someone. Story 9. Paying a couple $100s a month to a company that is supposed to pool your money with the rest of its customers to help pay the medical bills of each customer. But the customer still pays thousands for a hospital stay. Story 10. The world we build. I mean the actual physical environment around suburbs and cities. And the world we build. Story 11. That homelessness exists at all, and that the main political parties only address it as a nuisance issue and not as an issue involving suffering humans. Story 12. Mass shootings in the United States. We just look at the news, sigh, and say, "Oh, not again," because they never do anything about it. Story 13. Buying an automatic vacuum cleaner from one of the largest corporations in the world, having it map the layout of your home, and sending that data back to their headquarters. Story 14. The President of the United States is selling cars, cologne, merchandise, cryptocurrency, and more directly from the White House, as if hosting a home shopping network special from the Oval Office. Update. The President is now planning a Ultimate Fighting Championship pay-per-view event from the White House. We have officially reached Hunger Games meets Home Shopping Network levels of dystopia. My new answer is that Story 15. The spread of homelessness. The homeless are often treated as invisible or blamed for their circumstances. This reflects a loss of empathy, a key negative hallmark when society no longer sees certain people as worthy of dignity or inclusion. Story 16. Poverty. Let's be real here. There is enough to go around on this planet. No one, especially those in first world countries, should feel like a peasant in 2025. Story 17. Poor people voting for wealthy individuals who want to exploit them to benefit other wealthy individuals. If poor people stopped voting for the wealthy, that would greatly benefit society as a whole. Story 18. Chief executive officers earn hundreds of times the salary of their workers, while workers live paycheck to paycheck. They have just enough money to buy essentials, maybe take one vacation a year, and compete with coworkers for time off around the holidays. Every year, workers receive a raise, but healthcare costs increase, so they effectively make less money. When they file a claim, they are either denied or face deductibles so high that they pay out of their meager savings. This situation is only going to get worse. Story 19. We have so much wealth and resources as a species, but are unable to do what is best and right for all people. Story 20. The Western countries love their electric cars but often ignore the brutal suffering in countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where materials such as cobalt are mined to power their vehicles. Story 21. The fact is that we live to work instead of working to live like in the past. Most people cannot support themselves without working more than 50 hours a week. Story 22. 45,000 people die from preventable illnesses every year in the United States alone, due to lack of health insurance. Society seems indifferent to this because addressing it might reduce the profits of wealthy individuals. Story 23. Infant circumcision without anesthesia has been shown in studies to cause permanent alterations to the brain due to how traumatic and painful it is. It is also unethical to permanently alter someone's genitals before they are capable of understanding consent. Story 24. In the American context, Franklin D. Roosevelt told us that trickle-down economics does not work at the start of the 40 years of American prosperity. Then Ronald Reagan said trickle-down economics works, and 40 years later we are on the verge of ruin. We are not pushing nearly hard enough to return to what Franklin D. Roosevelt said and proved worked. Story 25. Funnily enough, most of society is what we think of as dystopian, based on our current society. Story 26. As an American, we could go bankrupt if you get seriously ill. There is no maternity leave, and we only get 2 weeks of vacation time per year. Story 27. Allowing children to be indoctrinated into an authoritarian institution where they are conditioned not to trust themselves but to obey authority, while having their autonomy taken away and being told that they are free. Story 28. A place online where I can hear a never-ending loop affirming my own opinion while never hearing alternative points of view. Story 29. Crowdfunding drones for military units. They then post graphic footage of the drones being used to kill people. You can even sponsor personal messages to be written on the munitions. Story 30. The fact that political platforms have devolved from a standard demanding a professional appearance with an emphasis on intelligence and ideas to whatever we have had for the past 9 years. Story 31. Being left to die miserably because you made a mistake or were just unlucky and lost your job or were injured. Story 32. Credit scores. Burdening people with overwhelming debt because they pursued an education they were told would guarantee a better job, and then denying them housing because they cannot keep up with that debt should be criminal. Story 33. People tell others not to call an ambulance when it could be a life or death situation because of the bill. I got into a massive electric bike wreck after hitting a pothole. I sprained my wrist, had a concussion, and palm-sized bruises and cuts everywhere. The only thing I was worried about was how much the ambulance was going to cost me. Luckily, it was a volunteer ambulance service, and they did not charge me. They even invited me to dinner at the place they worked once I was better. Exemplary men. Story 34. A man who knowingly broke multiple laws and committed multiple felonies while serving as President of the United States. Story 35. We give up all our information on the internet for anyone to see and carry small devices that tell others where we are. Story 36. Capitalism, especially late-stage capitalism, is ruining the working class of a country before our eyes. Individualism is being glorified. There is a lack of empathy, discrimination, and irrational hate for minorities or vulnerable communities. It is wrong to send someone innocent, even if they are an undocumented immigrant who committed no crimes, to a foreign detention center with no due process or access to anyone for an undetermined amount of time. This situation is deeply troubling. Story 37. The 5-day workweek. There are many alternate schedules in place now, so for most jobs there is no reason for it, and it is really soul-stealing. Unless childcare is needed, most children in the public school system should only attend in person 1 or 2 days a week, if they choose. Story 38. Corporate companies acquiring privately owned businesses and transforming them into standardized versions focused on profit rather than quality. Story 39. Where do I even begin? The obsession with punishment for criminals instead of reform, when other first world countries have tested and proven models for turning their convicted criminals into productive citizens. The casual hatred for the poor is also significant. Being poor is considered a moral failure rather than a societal failing. Story 40. The whole world is becoming a surveillance state, and people use social media to target specific individuals and bully them relentlessly. Corporations own your data, and you cannot opt out unless you move off the grid. Additionally, corporations are harming the environment while citizens take the blame. Story 41. The widespread normalization of a completely fake reality, also known as social media, and the behavior that follows in the real world. Story 42. Having to pay for medicine, food, water, and other necessities, and if society decides you cannot afford them, you face a slow, miserable death while being criminalized for trying to find shelter. Story 43. People are increasingly accepting mediocrity in everything, including music, movies, technology, food, clothing, and services. Story 44. We had lists of Ukraine's unprotected security cameras. I watched the first attack on Kiev that night. Felt surreal. Add to it all the Twitter content from both sides, and you have a war broadcast live 24/7 since day one. Story 45. Government housing projects. There is a reason they choose these locations to shoot dystopian science fiction films. Story 46. American tipping culture. It should not be up to the customer to pay an employee's wages directly so their employer does not have to. Also, the American healthcare system and the American education system. Story 47. The stock market is where people buy a stake in a company so they can sell that stake to someone else. Some hope the company will fail so the price drops and they profit. Cryptocurrency is a similar concept. Some people make hundreds of thousands working in finance, contributing little to the world, while struggling parents work 3 jobs on minimum wage to feed their children. Note: I do not have children and do not work in finance. I sympathize with the parents and dislike the unfairness. Story 48. The United States does not have universal health care, maternity leave of at least 40 weeks, or gun laws like other group of 20 nations. Story 49. Toxic manipulative bosses often behave condescendingly because there is no law preventing manipulative sociopathic behavior. Story 50. Look around. Our institutions are crumbling, and our systems of governance are weak against disinformation and fascist identity politics. We are living in the most dystopian reality. Story 51. Oil and gas industry subsidies. We are all willing to harm ourselves just to make wealthy individuals richer. The wealthy individuals will suffer alongside us, making the situation even more dystopian for them. Story 52. The number of children killed every year by soldiers from countless armies is staggering. Yet we emphasize the sanctity of life and the horrors of abortion. We live in a time of great abundance, yet we still face homelessness. Story 53. There is zero local oversight or recourse in local politics. The real political economic power is wielded by Walmart. Walmart de facto owns entire towns. If your business competes with Walmart, zoning boards will not grant you permission to operate. Your property is yours until you want to use it. When it comes into competition with existing money, you will be crushed unless you can bribe around it. The entire concept of landlords, the percentage of income that goes to rent, and their relationship with zoning board officials is important. Landlords, real estate firms, and contractors have legal control over your life path before you are even born. Story 54. Enormous lifted pickup trucks are driven in everyday life. Oversized trucks are practically the only type of vehicle our declining domestic automobile manufacturers still produce. Story 55. I want to say online dating. I do not think couples are supposed to meet like this, even if they actually do in practice. Story 56. Making life difficult for people with disabilities and the elderly was simply trying to live with what they have. Story 57. People talking loud and vulgar on their cell phones, not caring about anyone around them. People who will record you dying or getting injured but will not help you. A Neanderthal president with an equally ape-like administration constantly undermining the Constitution to create an even larger divide between the wealthy and the poor. The saddest part is that some Republicans are so hateful that they will see this country burn and sacrifice themselves before allowing others the chance to prosper. Story 58. The fact that people are asking artificial intelligence the absolute dumbest questions shows they lack life skills. Story 59. There are many good comments here already, but I think sharing your location is great for safety reasons. However, being expected to share my location with all of my friends feels overwhelming. No one needs to see my every move or be offended if I do not share it with them. Story 60. Credit scores were not a concept until the late 1980s. Now, many people are obsessed with their credit score. Story 61. The widespread surveillance means there is nowhere you can go without a camera, unless you are in the middle of the jungle or somewhere remote. However, it does have its benefits when it comes to solving crimes. Story 62. Allowing people to starve, be homeless, and suffer from poor health because they do not have enough money to pay for solutions. Story 63. How much you are expected to work, what conditions you are expected to work through, and how close most people are to becoming homeless. at least in that remarkable United States of America. Story 64. Refusing medical care to people who cannot afford to pay. It sounds like something from a William Gibson story. Story 65. The fact that insurance companies can and will deny necessary medication, procedures, and tests despite having no medical background, for the sole purpose of saving money. Story 66. Bombing poor people so that wealthy overlords can steal tax money. This is truly wild and happens every day. Story 67. I was horrified to see a new service at a clinic in an expensive neighborhood advertising the health benefits of plasma infusions. In some neighborhoods, poor people sell their blood. In others, wealthy people buy it. Story 68. Outside is so dangerous you cannot just walk or cycle or use any method other than motorized vehicles. You will be criticized for taking extreme risks. Story 69. Carrying around computers that have replaced our social lives and monitor everything we say and view. Story 70. The cameras are tracking us on the street. The software is tracking our online habits. Banks can track and predict our spending. Everything we do is tracked and logged. Even if we are not doing anything suspicious, we are training the software for more tracking. That is dystopian. Additionally, we are all serfs under the guise of freedom. Story 71. My local bar is replacing its American flag with the Blue Lives Matter flag. It is straight out of Man in the High Castle. Story 72. One thing can shut down or destabilize the world. One canal, one country's president, one virus, one volcano. Story 73. Certain chemicals and plants are illegal, while others are not only legal but also socially accepted. Story 74. People are becoming like cultists who worship technology giants and cryptocurrency scammers, showing tribalism around brands. Story 75. Wasting roughly 2/3 of your life doing menial tasks to make someone else rich. Meanwhile, they give you just enough money to keep you alive while working for them. Story 76. Climate warming is very noticeable now, and it is only the beginning. There are no serious changes yet. Humanity is still in the early exploration phase. Story 77. The fact that a cute, innocent little child can visit relatives on a farm, frolic, play, and cuddle with a cute, innocent little lamb, calling it his best friend, and then, not long after, be sitting eating that same lamb for dinner at night, enjoying the texture and flavor of its flesh with gravy and roast potatoes. Story 78. War seems like a good answer, but I will say abortion. Objectively speaking, it is pretty unsettling. In the past, when people wanted to have as many children as possible to survive, if they knew that in the future people would be voluntarily terminating healthy pregnancies, they would think something was wrong. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.